Welcome to Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. I'm Lori Falk, and together with my three powerhouse co-hosts and a slew of thought leaders and luminaries, we're bringing you a scintillating talk show style podcast that will disrupt the worlds of wealth and wellness as we know them today. We invite you to go on this journey with us as we offer you a paradigm shift that empowers you to change your approach to these key areas of your life. Join us and discover the truth that the future of wealth and wellness begins with you. Welcome back to Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. As you are listening to this, it's my birthday. How exciting is that? Yes, I'm a New Year's baby. I'm Lori Falk, and I'm here today with my three amazing co-hosts, and we want to talk to you about the power of 1 year. The power of 1 year. We're at the end of 2024. We are emerging at midnight into 2025, and there's all this talk about goals and resolutions, and guess what? We're not going to talk about that because, frankly, from my perspective as an epigenetic emotional healing coach, I look at it through a much different lens. I would prefer, rather than you sitting down and writing a list of intentions or of resolutions and goals, that you actually create an intention. What do you want this year to feel like? What do you want your experiences to be? Like, pretend that it's the end of 2025, which, gosh, that sounds like a long ways away. But guess what? It's only 365 days. So 365 days from now, it's New Year's 2025. How do you want to be feeling? Reflecting back on your life. Do you want to experience a year that's filled with more joy? Do you want to experience a year that's filled with more friendships? Do you want to experience a year that's filled with more love? Think about the feelings, because here's the key, the absolute key. You need to become a vibrational match to what it is you are wanting. So if you want more love, you want more friendships, you want more joy, then right now you need to move into 2025 in a vibrational frequency that's in alignment with that. So what I often recommend for my clients is that you sit down tomorrow and pretend that it's the end of 2025 and write yourself a letter. Dear Susie, it's the end of 2025, and looking back on your life, what does it look like? What does it feel like? How did things evolve and shift and change? And how did you experience more love, joy, and happiness, and health, and wealth? All the things that we're thinking about that would put you into those frequencies. So it's not about 1, 2, 3, here are my goals. It's the end of January. None of that happened. Tear up the list, throw it away. I didn't lose the 10 pounds, blah, blah, blah. Forget that. Every single day when you wake up, ask yourself, am I in vibrational alignment to attract what it is I want to attract today?
Lori, this is so powerful, what you're saying. And it's reminding me that most of the time people approach goals from the perspective of where they're not. And then we don't understand why we don't get there because we weren't a vibrational match. You know, we've been talking here, and I know we're going to have an episode in the new year about the book called The Having that we've been working with, that really does outline in the area of wealth and creation how important it is to come from the vibrational match of focusing on what we have rather than on what we don't have. And the way you describe this, I think that one shift could be enough to really change things for people, because we're usually coming at things from lack with respect to money. I know Leslie has a lot more to say about that, but we're usually, coming at it from, I'm too fat, I'm too out of shape, I'm too this, and that I need to fix something that's wrong with me, rather than building on, This is the body that I have and love, and these are the things that I'm going to be doing going forward to just sort of reinforce, that rather than frankly, a lot of the self-hate that women come to their bodies with. And then we don't understand why we don't come to a place where we're happy with ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we have to recognize that, particularly during this phase of the year where it's out with the old and in with the new, and we get carried away with the art of what is possible and forgetting the art of what is realistic. And I don't think we are realistic enough with regards to how easy it can be to derail ourselves when we're moving from a season that is full of light and hope and friendship and joy, basically. But we're moving to a period where we're taking down the decorations, we're clearing away the good stuff, be that alcohol, be that food, etc., etc. We're saying goodbye to family, we're going back to work, etc., etc. And then we lay on this heavy expectation that we're going to go on this massive journey of change, rather than actually, as you say, celebrating where we are and looking at what small, steady improvements can we make to really be leading the kind of life we want to be leading. We tend to go into that mindset of all or nothing, a little bit like in an episode from a couple of weeks ago when I talked about that Robbie Williams lyric where we overdose at Christmas and we give it all up at Lent. Well, actually, we attempt to give it all up on the 1st of January. And we wonder why we end up failing when we're not in the right frame of mind to commit to the things, because actually, do we really want to commit to them? Or do we think we should commit to them? Should we be a version of ourselves that is not really aligned with who we want to be? And therefore, we're setting ourselves up to fail already. And I think that's a really important consideration.
Mhm. So this is a really interesting time for me personally, as I know it is for everyone. We're going through some really intense changes and shifts in the universe and the world, and everyone's experiencing some interesting times. I personally am coming into a completely new chapter in my life, and it is really scary. I tried to move away from the thought of, oh, this is not where I expected to be at this point in my life, and remind myself that all of the things that I accomplished to get to this space and how much work I put into myself. New Year's is something that we celebrate from the time of our youth. We get excited to, whether you watch the ball drop, the apple drop in New York, wherever you are around the world, you kind of have that countdown and it's really exciting. And so, to all of our friends who are listening, I want you to take a look at all of those versions of yourselves throughout those years of, the young and vibrant college kid who was out partying, ready, and going to New Year's parties. And then maybe you're a young entrepreneur starting in a new venture. Maybe you're a young mom. Maybe are in a depressive state, PTSD, or whatever it is that you're experiencing. We have these highs and lows, and we have all of these different versions of ourselves bringing us into this new year. And so right now, where I'm at in my life, I am reflecting back on all of those versions, and I'm really accepting all of those versions of me and taking that back into my heart and really loving that this is a different breed where I am right now. I am a completely different version, nothing that I ever thought that I would be like, but I am so in love with where I'm at and how I'm approaching this new year. And I'm just so thankful for all of those versions of me that brought me into this space. And so I don't think that I'm going to be, setting any resolutions. Lori, I definitely wake up and set an intention every day, um, but I'm really kind of in this space now of gratitude and honoring all of the difficult versions that brought me into this space.
Jenny,
So
what you just said is so powerful that I want to do something that I don't know we've explicitly done before yet on this podcast, is just really invite anyone for whom that resonates, and maybe even just stop the recording for a moment and take that in and really reflect on all the versions of yourself that you get to bring into this moment. Because Jenny, I don't know that I've actually done that exercise before. That you just kind of blew my mind there.
And is that not exactly the way to think about the new year? When you think about all you have been to get to where you are now, and all you need to become to take you to where you want to be, as Laurie said, at the end of 2025. And this isn't like, what is that? The Wizard of Oz. It's not like the Wizard of Oz when Dorothy clicks her heels and says, "There's no place like home, there's no place like home." And all of a sudden, whoosh, she's at home. It's not a whoosh to get to 2025. There's steps that we need to take along the way. And it is that intention. It's intentionally what parts of you do you want to take forward into 2025? What parts of you would you like to leave behind in 2024? And a question I always like to ask at this time of year is, if you couldn't fail, what would success look like for you? Because I think very often we look at what we can do with fear and trepidation and hold ourselves back, rather than looking well, actually, if I was to take that big, bold step, what would that look like? And then you can work on a plan to actually get to where you want to be at the end of 2025. So I think what you said there, Jenny, was a real lift off point where we can seriously, intentionally leave behind what we want to, but actually take with us those parts of us that we are celebrating and we're grateful for.
And listen, you've also
Exactly.
reminded us about like breaking it down into smaller pieces. Because I think, as you said, that's one of the ways people set themselves up to fail, is that it needs to be all or nothing. And life really doesn't work that way. I had a colleague, a partner a number of years ago, really impressed that on me, that all you need to focus on is moving the needle every day. And the way I think of it is you can multiply by anything but zero. As long as there's some forward motion, it will be cumulative. And, when I was thinking about today's episode, and reflecting on this past year, I was a little bit shocked about actually how much did get accomplished, because there were so many steps. And I was thinking about, the idea of setting intentions, and then about living in the moment and being guided with inspired action. Because I think that's something that people think is an either or. Either we're intending or we're acting. I think it ideally is both, but it's inspired action. It's not, spinning our wheels kind of stuff. And one of the lessons that I learned this year, actually, I'm going to say this because this might be welcome, is sometimes one of the most productive things or effective things we can do is nothing. In the sense that when sometimes I'm having a day, and we had one of those this week, where things got a little overwhelming, and I know myself well enough, it was stress and cortisol and vagus nerve and all the things we talk about, but I don't get to think as clearly when I'm in that state. And I don't tend to get the same kind of guidance or insight, whatever you want to call it, that I do when I'm in a balanced state. And sometimes just lying down and breathing for a while and coming back to whatever the issue is, it's, oh, I just need to call so-and-so. They're going to have an answer for me. Or, oh, there was that one thing that I forgot that's going to that I wouldn't have actually been able to think of those things when I was in a more stressed state. And that kind of comes back to something I shared in an earlier episode that I'm really looking forward to delving into another time, is this teaching of what if we approach life from the perspective that there's no problems, there's just choices to make and things to do. And there were some challenging things that happened this year. I sold my mom's house. I mean, there were some things that were emotional and, legitimately hard to do. And if I hadn't maintained that, if I'd allowed myself to get all, in knots, I wouldn't have been as effective, and I wouldn't have literally had those thoughts of, oh, this is the person I need to call that's going to have the solution for me. So there's a paradox that I have found sometimes that turning up the gas isn't always the way to go. Sometimes rolling it back and getting into a relaxed enough state to be aligned with our higher wisdom is more effective than any, just spinning our wheels actions that sometimes feel more satisfying to take. So I'm curious how how that's resonating for us, because that was huge for me this year.
Definitely, definitely. It's what we need to impress upon our audience is life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. Because even when something happens that is seemingly bad or sad or something that's upsetting, what we have to really do is look for the gift in strange wrapping paper. And it's not always super obvious. And sometimes it takes time to unfold. But if you can just trust that there's a reason, I don't know what it is right now, because I had something happen to me this past year that really impacted my income stream very intensely and suddenly. And I could have gone down the rabbit hole very easily. Oh, woe is me. I can't believe this happened. And I went, oh, wait. I remembered that I had set some super, super powerful intentions for myself for the year. And I'm like, okay, if I'm a conscious millionaire, which that was my mantra for the year, then that maybe really needed to happen, because that wasn't the path that was going to take me there. And I'm reminded, Leslie, who brought up The Wizard of Oz, the real metaphysical, spiritual message of that movie is that Dorothy had the power all along. The clicking of the ruby slippers was her becoming a vibrational match to being back home. She closes her eyes and she gets into the emotional state of what it'll feel like to be there. And like magic, there she is. And so that's what I want all of you who are listening to really consider for 2025, if you haven't done it yet. Simple, simple, simple. Everything is energy. That means your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions are all energetic prayers, if you will, going out to the universe to attract back what it is that you're a match to. Not what you're wanting, but what you're a match to. So that means, since you have the power all along, that you need to do the best you can on a daily basis to, not all day, because I'm not trying to be Pollyanna here, but at least for 5 minutes every day, become that vibrational match of joy, become that vibrational match of unconditional love, and really feel what it feels like to be experiencing that. Some people just need to dance, turn on some music and dance. Some people need to sit down and meditate and just send that energy out. Most important of all is to realize that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we are so powerful, and we have so much help in the universe around us. We just need to call it in. Call in your intuition, call in your higher self, call in your angels, call in your guides, call in whatever works best for you. But then listen to that still small voice. Listen to the inspired action, because it's not necessarily going to just fall in your lap. Okay, give you a little example. So a couple of months ago, I did a Dr. Joe meditation in the morning, and I did the typical, and I want to know that you heard me. And if you really heard me, then let something happen today that is so uniquely out of the ordinary that there's absolutely no questioning in my mind that you heard me and this was real. So an hour later, I go to take my little Gabby out for a walk, and we came back in, and there was a sign on the bulletin board by the elevator that said, free pleated shades for the bay window. Well, you can't see it, but right behind me, there's this big bay window. And these were custom made pleated shades that only fit the bay windows in this building. They were brand new, still in the box. They'd never been hung. They had been in the building for not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 years since the pandemic started, because somebody ordered them and couldn't get anybody to hang them. They had a bunch of different owners, but here's the key. I said inspired action. The inspired action was rip the darn sign off the bulletin board so nobody else sees it, and text them right away and say, I'll take them. And that's what I did. So if I hadn't followed the inspired action, it wouldn't have happened. But definitely that was the universe saying, we heard you. Here's a gift to let you know that we did.
And
So
Lori,
that's
you
actually
mentioned Dr.
just-
Joe meditation. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows she was talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is a really, really, really important doctor, thought leader, who has done a great deal to help us understand the miracles that our bodies are capable of. So just
Well, he's actually, and I wanted to say when that first came out, the very first time he said that, if anyone is interested, was over 20 years ago now, in a strange little doco film that was released called "What the Bleep Do We Know?" And that's the first time that I heard that. So we'll put that in the show notes for anyone who wants to check that out. It's quite hilarious, but really powerful and kind of ahead of its time. I wanted to also talk about, what do we do? What are some traditions to kind of set us in that path of intention? For my mother and I, we like to cut out magazine pictures and create a storyboard for the year. What's it called?
vision
The
board.
word vision board. Thank you. So that's something that we love to do. So I would love to know what everyone kind of does to set an intention for the year. I think vision boarding is a really fun way to do that, especially if you have lots of old magazines laying around that you maybe need to let go of and release some of that extra baggage around the house. And if you're listening, I want to hear from the ladies here, but if you're listening, please jump on our Facebook group and let us know a fun way that you set your intention. That would be really cool for us to see.
Yeah.
Jenny,
Something
thanks
that
for
we
asking.
did.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Something that we did for a few years, and we stopped, and I wish we hadn't stopped. And I think now could be the ideal time to start again. Every Sunday, as a family, we would talk about one thing that we really loved that happened in that previous week. And I would write it down and we would put it into a jar. So come the end of the year, we would have, loads of these notes, and we would pick one out on New Year's Eve, and we would read to remind ourselves of all, because we say time goes by so quickly, but actually when you look back to something that happened in February, it seems further away than your mind's eye actually perceives how time goes. And that was such a lovely bonding thing to do, both on the Sunday and at the end of the year. So I'm going to set an intention now, Jen, that I'm going to restart that with my family, particularly as my boys are now teenagers. One's 18, one's 16. So that their experiences, what's important to them, is going to be different to what it was when we were last doing that, when they were both much younger, they were both in school. So you've reminded me that that was a tradition that we really enjoyed. And it just, I think it went away because of lockdown, because we weren't actually going anywhere. So it was a little bit difficult to come up. There was something that was different for each of us. But I'm making an intention now on New Year's Eve 2024 that we're going to restart that and to look forward to reading all those notes in 12 months' time. So thank you for that reminder. Who's next?
Cool. I'm amused, Jenny. I didn't know you were going to ask us this, but you know what mine is. And I happen to have it sitting here on my lap. One of my tools, and I use this almost daily. I was taught this about 30 years ago, is mind mapping. And I literally have a sketch pad in my lap that I use to do brain dumps like all the time for planning and all kinds of purposes. I have it right here. But one of the ways to use it is for this kind of intention setting, and I would say like energy focusing, because it's much more than just intentions on the level of mind. It starts to create that vibrational match that Lori talks about. And what I was taught 30 years ago was to do a mind map that in the middle you write ideal scene and a date. So this could theoretically be, next New Year's Eve. And then just like a brain dump of spokes of all in different areas of your life. This is what I want for my well-being. This is what I want for my finances. This is what I want for relationship, family. And you just write down whatever's there. And then at the bottom, this part's important. You write this or something better for the highest good of all concerned. And then you just let it go. And it can be kind of like a guiding light, in some ways, like a larger intention. But I think it sets things in motion. And like Lori said, when you put that out, it's good to be amused about the things that show up, because sometimes the synchronicities are just hysterical. And for some of us, they often show up in connection with shoes. But that's one of mine that I wanted to share.
All fabulous ideas, ladies. Absolutely fabulous.
Shall I throw one more
Absolutely.
in there? Because this is something that I do every New Year's Eve. I haven't done it so far yet, but I will do it later on
Drink
today.
champagne? No.
That will happen, I'm sure. Absolutely. 1 or 2 glasses, no more than that. No, I don't promise at all. That would be a complete lie.
I love champagne. So,
but along the lines of what you said, Laurie, earlier about a letter to your future self. So it's normally on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day that I do it. And I write a letter to my future self, but I go to a website called futureme.org. We'll include that in the show notes. And I email that letter to arrive back to me exactly 12 months later. So I email it to myself, and it acts as an accountability buddy, because you kind of remember what's in that letter, but at the same time, you don't want to let yourself down, that you make all these promises that you're going to achieve all these great things, then you get your letter back and gulp. I didn't lose the 10 pounds. I didn't run the London Marathon. I didn't. We don't want that. So I make my focus very much around small goals that move me forward. There's nothing big in there, but it's progress. And I think that is the important thing for me. It's progressive. It moves me forward. I know it's going to happen. It holds me accountable, but also it gets me to do what I love best. It gets me to celebrate the results that I have brought for myself, for whoever is included in that letter. And I think for me, that has been a really, really great tool to move me into the new year, having planned those steps that I'm going to be taking to move me forward, but in a way that doesn't set me up for failure, because previously I've made the big, bold New Year's resolutions that pretty much by the 10th of January, I'm feeling a failure. And I think for us to set intentions that allow you to be in a place, you're meeting yourself where you are at and thinking about how you want to move yourself forward, then doing that letter, emailing it to yourself, knowing it's coming back, for me, that has been a really positive way to embrace the new year rather than thinking it has to be all or nothing. That's another one from
And
me.
Leslie, I think you've addressed kind of the issue of managing our own expectations. So I want to just add one thing to that, which is just a reminder that life is not linear. And it's rarely steady forward progress. It's usually ups and downs. It's usually, I like to think of spiraling up. You know, sometimes we have the experience of like, oh gosh, I thought I dealt with that, issue years ago and it's showing up again. But we're dealing with it from a different place of consciousness and maturity. And so I think, it's life is usually a few steps forward and one back. And knowing that, we don't need to beat ourselves up for the step back. And I would also remind us that things are kind of seasonal and cyclical. There's times to sow and reap. We plant seeds in the spring, we harvest in the fall, we rest in the summer, we hibernate in the winter. There's natural ebbs and flows of our energy and things that are the optimal match for our energy at any given time. So I think that's another thing we might offer, as some distinctions for ourselves. What else do we want to wrap up with?
I think it's important. You brought up a good point that it's not linear. I think what's important is for people to realize that if January 1st, 2025, you're at point A and you believe that that joy, happiness, and love is at point B, and it looks like it's about 10 steps above where you are now, it's not a direct line, okay? You're gonna make a little progress and then plateau. And then you might even dip a little bit and then make a little more progress, go in that progress and then plateau and then dip a little bit again, because that's how it works. But notice, those of you who are actually watching the video, my hand is not going back down to point A. So when you make the dips, you don't go back as low as you started. That's the key. So while you might have setbacks, while there might be stumbling blocks along the way, don't give up. Just keep your eye on your intention of how you're going to feel and really get as non-specific as you can about the details. Don't be attached to the outcome. If the intention is love, joy, and happiness, or love, joy, and wealth, or whatever it is, don't be attached that you have to do A, B, C, and D to achieve that goal, because the universe might surprise you and might bring it to you in an entirely different way than you could have ever possibly imagined. When I'm working with people and talking about the angels, I always say our angels have a 10,000-foot view. We have about 100-foot view. So we can just see what's going on 3D right here around us. They can see backwards and forwards in time. Let the universe help you. Don't think you have to do it all yourself, and don't think you have to have it all planned out. I'm not saying that it's not important to take steps, because as I mentioned, I ripped that sign off the bulletin board and those blinds are hanging behind me. They look gorgeous, by the way. But it's just important not to say, here's how it has to happen, because that's often where we get stuck. And when it doesn't happen the way we think it's supposed to happen, then we label it failure. When in reality, it might be exactly the way it's supposed to be for another door to open.
That's where the this or something better for the highest good of all concerned comes in. And as we know, having navigated getting this podcast launched, we've been living this in a very real way, as human as everybody else, riding the waves, sharing the wisdom. And I'll just, for myself, just as we maybe start to wrap up, I am thrilled about the fact that we, as a group here, are incorporating all of this wisdom into what we're looking forward to sharing with all of you next year. So you can look forward to more of this kind of truth, reaching into some of the quantum wisdom that is becoming more and more available to us. And the four of us here have been chewing on and processing this for a while. And it's come to the point that we have it in a form to share with you that we are just really thrilled about. So that's one of my intentions for the new year, is that we get to show up here to share all of this with you and introduce the guests that we're going to introduce and really contribute to the intentions that I have for the planet, which is a more
Absolutely.
conscious, loving world that is able to embrace the things that Lori's sharing with us.
Absolutely. And what I would like to request from all of you is that you let us know what you've enjoyed thus far, what you would like more of, how we can best bring you what it is that's going to make your lives amazing. So reach out to us on our social media platforms, email us, send us notes, and let us know how we can really make 2025 the most spectacular year ever for each and every one of you. So I just want to wish everyone a happy new year. I want to say, let's get this party started. And thank you so much for joining us for yet another episode of Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. We love you, we appreciate you, and we look forward to a fabulous 2025 with each and every one of you. God bless. Thank you so much for joining us today on Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed, where we empower women to take control of the two most important areas of their life, their health and their wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another amazing woman who's ready to elevate her wealth and wellness journey. Stay connected with us by heading to our website and joining our Facebook community. All the details can be found in the show notes. Until next time, keep thriving and unleashing your highest potential.